Good morning. My name is Barkley. Um, my co-hosts today are going to be Hans, Tristan, and Joseph, who are in green. So mine going to be in blue, and Scott going to be in orange. So today we're going to discuss about health, compartmentalizing of stress and trauma. Scott Grimmett is a 26-year veteran of the fire service and military. Scott, can you tell us something about yourself?
Yes, Buckley, thank you. I appreciate being here with you guys this morning as part of the Phys-Emotional Us group in this podcast. I have been in the fire service for 26 years with the city of Idaho Falls. I initially started my fire service education with Mission College, and I'm wrapping that up currently right now. In concurrence, I've been in the Coast Guard Reserve for about the same amount of years. And so I have quite a bit of experience in the emergency services and the military, which is very similar to the fire service. The Coast Guard is really what I'm involved in is operating as law enforcement and the fire service on the water using boats instead of fire engines.
So you are today with us to talk about healthy compartmentalization of stress and trauma. Can you tell us a little bit more about this topic and why is it so important?
Sure, Buckley. You know, in psychology, compartmentalization is defined as a psychological defense mechanism. So as firefighters or as military service members, we need to be able to manage what we find objectionable to ourselves or to others, and be able to lighten the heaviness of that in our existence. This pertains to our jobs and also personal trauma. So we can keep on doing what we've been called to do as our selected profession. One aspect of our job is the environment remains the same. It does not change. So sometimes when people experience trauma with the death of a loved one or a car accident, they go back to their regular normal stasis of life, where we live in that as part of our career. And if we don't manage these emotions, they can be basically a ticking time bomb or career ender for us. And I just want to share a little bit about myself. You know, I did live a very charmed life here in California. I grew up with a mom and dad who were hardworking, middle-class folks. My dad was in construction. My mom taught school. I was in Boy Scouts. We did a lot of service around in our neighborhood with our folks that we go to church with in school. So I had quite a bit of experience of helping others. But for me, the most significant trauma I had growing up was the initial breakup of my first girlfriend, and then my grandfather, who passed away when I was a senior. So prior to going to college, those were my limited experiences with trauma, until I got my first job, my first full-time job with Idaho Falls Fire. And that even started out really awesome with a lot of training, a lot of experience, making me very confident in my skills and my abilities, being able to show up on the scene, knock out a fire real quickly, get somebody out of a car wreck. But I didn't have anything really challenging until my second year on the job. And the second year on the job, we had a Christmas Day fire. So this fire included a family where 3 young children did not get out. So in this experience, we slowed down time. We tried to do everything we could to be safe, but be expeditious. We were on the verge of burning ourselves. I mean, when we left that fire, we had melted helmets, shields, burned hands and legs and thighs trying to get these children out of there. We were able to successfully get 2 out, and 1 we did not find until after the fire was extinguished. But this was the first real experience I had with trauma and trying to shelve my emotions in certain places, trying to deal with them. And what we did at the time is we talked about things around our dinner table. We talked about things with other fellow firefighters, shared on things we could have done better, tried to rationalize it in our minds of like, well, at least we got there quick. At least we got there as soon as possible to get those 2 out. We did CPR. You know, at the end of the day, they were able to do some organ harvesting and save other children's lives. but I didn't really have a structured ability to deal with that kind of trauma. So that's why I chose this topic to discuss, to help others that may be facing some of those challenges in their personal life or career.
So thank you for sharing. That's an incredible and heartbreaking story. To use this technique now of compartmentalization, there must be some kind of plan now that you've established, or that is given to you by the department, or how do you do it? Is there a system now that you've learned ever since this tragedy?
Yeah, Hans, I think in that developing a system, we look to the professionals. We look to those who have dedicated their lives in dealing with trauma, or to the psychological mind that we have to understand and try to learn from our experiences. It's not easy. We want to still continue to do what we've been asked to do, what we've been hired to do, to serve the city and to be as professional as we can be. And one way that we do that is that we are as prepared as we can be to face those challenges. That also includes being mentally prepared, not just physically or running drills or dragging hose. But the to-do list that we've learned from the psychological professionals have been to find appropriate time to address these emotions. What we do in the fire service is we have after actions where we get together, we talk about the good things, the deltas, the things that we could have done better, what we've learned from it. We try to find some type of positiveness out of that experience, like I mentioned with the organ donating. But sometimes you just need to take time to decompress. You need to take time to talk to others, to express your feelings, to share with your brothers and sisters at the firehouse dinner table, and also to yourself, to ponder what that means to you, what this tragedy how you can learn from it to be better tomorrow, to take time to meditate, read books, go on walks, and then seek assistance if that's not working. The second thing we want to do is try to identify these emotions together, which I've been better at in identifying what bothers me and what doesn't. It always helps to talk, though, whether we feel it's not a big deal or not. Always going through the motions of talking about it, doing after actions, expressing with your coworkers, always helps you process that information the best way possible. What we want to do also is group those emotions together. I find that when I get a certain type of emergency call, I can pace my breathing and my heart rate, because I know I've been there before. I know kind of what I could expect to see, good or bad. And lastly is to avoid false negativity. We don't want to try to relate things that aren't related. We had a car wreck and a young mother died because something else was going on in my day, so I place blame and guilt on myself over that when they're not related, right? Things happen, we rise to the challenge and try to do our best to mitigate those emergency calls from happening, and then do our best to service our public when they do happen.
Yeah, so it's really trying to keep that correlation versus causation distinction clear, is what I'm hearing you say.
Correct, yeah.
Wow. So do these techniques help you? And first of all, from all of us, thank you for your service and for all your department does. I mean, I can't imagine what you've seen. It's amazing that you're able to continue doing it. Do you find that these techniques help you maybe stay positive about your profession, your career? Do you ever feel like it's going to be too much to handle, or is this technique of compartmentalization effective enough that you are able to keep a positive attitude and look forward to going to work every day, or do you dread it?
No, I think kind of the next thing we were talking about was, how do I keep going, right? Or how do I remain positive in dealing with these daily traumas that I can't separate from, because it's our job, right? So in a recent article from Esther Perel, who's a professional in the world of psychology, she gave an opinion that I thought really summed it up. for me and my mental well-being and where I strive to be personally in my life with my kids and family. And she talked about who copes well in crisis, stress, or trauma. And she said it was a surprise. It's not those who always look at the bright side of things, but it's those who cultivate an attitude of tragic optimism. That term was coined by Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist from Vienna. And it refers to the ability to maintain hope and find meaning in a crisis. So Mr. Frankl described it as the human capacity to creatively turn life's negative aspects into something positive or constructive. And what that means to me is it may not be a positive outcome for those we serve, but if I can learn something to be better, to be faster, to be more efficient, to be more understanding, more compassionate to those that we serve in the community, that's something that keeps me positive. It's something that I've learned from an experience that I can make it a better experience the next day. And it helps me putting my boots back on and get back on the truck, because if not, you would not be able to stay in law enforcement or military or fire service very long, or emergency medical services as well.
Wow. So it sounds to me, it sounds very difficult. Are there traps, pitfalls? Are there things that make it easier, things that you would typically avoid to, as part of this system?
Yeah, I kind of mentioned it at the beginning, is to identify those emotions as a thing to do, but what you do not want to do, or what you want to avoid, is to stay away from denial. Adult males are really good at denying emotions. They deny that they're having chest pains and possibly a heart attack. We deny that we love somebody and can express that in a positive manner sometimes. And so to really stretch yourself in your abilities to say, I need this. This is something I need to talk about, something I need to share with others. One thing that helps us with not experiencing denial is putting an engineering fix in place, like the after action reports or the after action discussions. With that, if you're not even talking in that discussion, you're at least listening and being a part of it. So that helps as well. And the last thing is to avoid multitasking, to avoid, when you're in a situation that really would need your focus and attention and your ability to process information, you should not be thinking about tomorrow or, what you're going to be doing when you're getting off work. It really takes some due diligence to stay focused up, avoid being distracted, not denying that you need to address these things. So again, you can keep going. And I think lastly, I would share an example, kind of like my first one, but this one was just a couple of weeks ago. So part of my career, I've worked as a flight paramedic with Air Idaho Rescue. And about 3 weeks ago, they were doing maneuvers over town. And I haven't been with them for a few years now, but I still know and love everybody that still works over there, the pilots, nurses, and medics. And just the other day, they were doing maneuvers over town. I thought they were doing some break-in maneuvers for a new pilot. And later on in the afternoon, we got a call for a crashed helicopter right by one of our golf courses. So in my mind, I know that the training helicopters for flight school aren't working right now. I know the news helicopters aren't in this area. And so I immediately am thinking, these are my friends, right? These are my friends that just crashed at a freaking golf course. And I immediately just became super anxious, but I was able to kind of go back through my past experiences to say, look, this is what I've been called to do: control my breathing, get my heart rate under control so I can be the best service to those that may be in this accident that I may know. And I learned through all these years of dealing with my emotions that I was able to control myself as I neared the scene. Luckily, as we got there, it ended up being the helicopter was just going through over the trees, and the bystander saw them, and then they were breaking up some lava rock on a new construction site, and they detonated some explosives. So So this
Oh,
big
thank
dirt pile that
goodness.
popped up, they thought was a helicopter. It wasn't. And so with that came a lot of relief, but a little bit of understanding, like, I could have been a wreck trying to drive through traffic, get over there, see my friends in this aviation accident, but I wasn't. I was able to deal with those in a timely manner and effectively still operate to serve those who could have been in need.
Can you
Wow.
share some final thoughts, Scott?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, Buckley, I mean, I appreciate all the questions and the things we've talked about. They're super personal. I appreciate your guys' input and listening ears. But just remember, you can be on the same call with an engine company of 4 individuals experiencing the same thing, but it may be different for me than it is for my fire captain Hans, that it is for my tailboarder Tristan, and my driver engineer Joseph, and Buckley, my paramedic. We could see things and feel things a lot differently. So just because you may not feel like this is super important, you still need to consider those that you work with. Watch out for your shipmates, your classmates, your brothers and sisters in the fire service. Be concerned with those around you, especially if you're in a supervisor role or even as a peer group supervisor, to mention things up. So everything is not the same for all of us, even though we solve the same things. And to remember that you're not alone. A lot of people in military, law enforcement, and fire have been dying more through suicide versus actually than on emergencies or in fires or in shootouts. We're dying more and more through suicide and not dealing with these emotions. There's always someone here to listen. There's suicide hotlines. There's in Idaho Falls, we established a trust team with firefighters that have been trained to manage and process information for those who are struggling, to get a hold of the proper certified mental health professionals, and to do this anonymously. One of the things that we have a struggle with is I don't want my coworkers to know that I'm struggling. And so through this trust team and through this process, we've trained everybody, shared information, and it's given an empowerment to those to reach out, because they know that their name isn't going to be talked about Monday morning of like, oh, Joe firefighter went down for counseling today, or he needed to talk to somebody. So that's the last thing I want to finish off on, is that you're not alone. There are people that can help, and to be aware of those around you that may be struggling or not in their normal state of being. So,
And I have one
Thanks,
last
Scott.
question. I'm
Okay, go
sorry,
ahead.
Buckley. Just one last question, Scott. Is this technique of compartmentalization, is this something that anybody, even in a not such a high risk profession, just that students or doctors or people, other people, can they incorporate this into their life? Is it applicable to a broader category of individuals than military, police, and fire?
I a lot of the research I've done indicates that this is on the simple steps of going through stress. Even if you're just have anxiety, taking final exams, or being a student, all those things apply. You just need to be more fine-tuned at that craft as the stress levels rise, right? So one of the fears is that anyone can be detached. I'm not compartmentalized. Now I'm detached. I'm not dealing with it. I don't, and that's where you separate your beliefs and your ideals away from what your actions are. And so you never want to be involved in an escapism or a detachment, instead of trying to process the stress and trauma in a way that lets you put it in baskets versus ignoring it, moving on and living in a fantasy world. But this can be at all levels utilized. And I think the more stress you have, the better you should be at it, and the more that you're open and sharing with others about the process.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott, for sharing your meaningful story and information. And thanks, my co-host, for your question. And thank you all for listening to our podcast.
Thank you.
See you again.
See you
Thank you.
next time. Goodbye.